it's so funny. We get a lot of views after. So people like go on at their Friday. Some people dial in, they come and go, and then afterwards we get a bunch of people watching and then sending emails to me like, I wish I was there to comment on it. But anyway, here we are Friday again, and I've hit the record button. So we are here with Office Hours. And if you're coming from the Minneapolis market, it is 40 some degrees. That is where Dr. Rachel DePaul, our guest, and I are. And if you can see my illustrious co-host, Dave Meyer, he's suffering. He's somewhere where there's palm trees and sun and that other kind of stuff. So we feel for him, and we wish him a speedy trip home to back where it's a more temperate climate.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to see everybody. And as I was telling folks before the recording started, I'm just about ready to head out for the airport. So, but I couldn't miss my Office Hours family. So, hey, everybody, and I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, it's chilly here at 73. There are Scottsdalians walking around in wool coats, but
oh my goodness. Well,
And
Dave,
you're in like
travel.
a t-shirt, right?
That's right. That's right. Travel well, my friend. We always love your time on here, even though it's brief, and the ripple that you create for the rest of humanity through here. So travel away safe and get home safe, and we'll see you next Friday.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Travel safe.
Welcome everybody else to Office Hours. It is Dr. Rachel DePaul and myself today. We're glad you're all joining us today. It is like I said, it's a beautiful day in Minnesota. And so, hopefully you're sitting on your back porch with your earpods in or someplace. If you're sitting, Rachel, I realize if you're sitting in the sun, you'll be okay today.
I think so, and even like a light jacket, but that sun feels, we need that after kind of a dark and dreary winter. Spring is here.
We do. Spring is here. And in so many ways, so many more ways. We need the refresh.
Yes.
In 1,000 more ways. So for our listening audience and those dialing in later, once again, welcome. Just a couple of starter things. As you know, if you've attended the show, we'll kind of talk a little while, and then if you chat or raise your hand, we'll answer it and have a good dialogue. Our subject today and our guest today is Dr. Rachel DePaul.
Hello.
It's so glad to so do you like Dr. Rachel? Do you like Rachel? Do you like Dr. DePaul? What do you like?
All of the above are fine. I'm pretty chill on it, to be honest. Yeah. Like on the one hand, I have worked hard for my doctorate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like I should probably honor that. But at the other hand, I don't really like the hierarchy that it sometimes creates. So you can just call me Rachel. That's totally fine.
That's awesome. And I think that's good. You're a human being before you're a doctor, right?
I say that all the time. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about a very important aspect to this whole independent, fractional, not work full-time for a big corporation world, which is growing fast, and everybody who's here is either in it or entering it or whatever. And Dr. Rachel has a background and a history and a practice that is there to help people with self-care and business and all sorts of other things. So we're going to open, if you have questions about it, but as usual, I'm going to talk too much because that's what I do. I'm Irish. I can't help it. It's the way it is. But at the same time, we have to unpack what we did in our careers. We have to learn how to have self-care and balance as we go into fractional world. So Rachel, I'm really happy you're here because this is a very big dimension of working in a non-traditional way.
It's huge. You're totally right on as far as even you alluded to, like, it's not even just like a work transition, it's a life transition. And there's a lot of years and ways of being and assumptions and expectations that go into what work is, right? Yeah. Even like when we're kids, it's, I'm going to grow up to be a doctor or a lawyer or in construction or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And we have an assumption of what our life is going to look like. And I think our school systems and our training teach us really well on how to do that.
For decades. Totally.
Yeah, and so then if that's not a good fit for you, if it's, maybe God forbid something tragic happened that gave you a wake up call,
Mhm.
if it's just not, rubbing you the wrong way. And so then there's some burnout and unhappiness,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well then, so what else is there? And then we start thinking about these other options, being
Yeah.
independent, working for ourselves.
Mhm.
We have to undo all of what was done,
Fast.
then make the decision, and fast, exactly, and then work on rewrite. So all of this is happening simultaneously.
So nobody should feel alone because we're all going through it. 2 years ago, like you said, this was decades. Sometimes you could argue centuries, but at least decades in the making. Is our education system, our work culture, how all of that went, the norms, the societal norms that as a planet we've all embraced. This westernized way of working isn't just in the West. We
Right.
know that other countries, have this work, grind, and it's sort of been the mode du jour in working. And then all of a sudden we had a moment a few years ago called COVID, and quite honestly, it all came to a screeching halt, didn't it?
That definitely, I don't think that started anything, but
Right.
I think it took this entrepreneurship and lit it on fire. And I'm actually so excited for
Mhm.
people because they're pushing back against that norm. They're carving out their
Yeah.
own path, and they're flying, they're freer, they're
Yeah.
lighter, they're happier. It's like, wow, who'da thunk?
Talk more about that, because those are really, really important. They're flying, they're lighter, they're freer. You're right. There was a dramatic moment on its way to happening, and then COVID hit, and then this big change hit. And, you could argue like, wow, the whole thing stopped and it's all got shook to the ground. But you're saying people are lighter and freer and happy. Isn't that the ultimate win?
I would say so, but I'm biased because I'm in psychology.
Well, I will tell you, there's a total capitalist. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk, and Vaynerchuk Media. And if you're on TikTok and all the social channels, he's very early to all that. And he's very, very well known. And he kind of used to preach like, grind, you got to do anything to grind. He's a very good person. And he sort of flipped his script a little bit, or changed his tune in a good way. He's like, he said the other day, he said, 8 billion people have to change their definition of what success is. It's not to make piles of money. It's to wake up in the morning feeling good about yourself.
Yep.
I think he's right.
Yep.
I think in our careers, we have to think differently. What do you see? Tell us, lay it on us. You've got to help people through this transition. What's happening out there?
I would agree fully. I think, we've been chasing, and I'm only really familiar more so with like Western ideals, right? And I
Mhm.
know the kind of the American dream and the money, and this goes back decades as well.
Mhm.
And there's that grind kind of sentiment with that. With that also, there's this like expectation and assumption that success equals this thing, right? However
Mhm.
many dollars of bills that is, or how many hours in a week worked, or the house, or the keeping up with the Joneses and whatever. And I think we're feeling this shift. And again, I think COVID expedited it, is like, hold on a second, like that isn't actually what's more meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling and seeing people reorienting around their values of what is important to them. If it is money or a salary, like, I don't think there's shame in that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
Right.
But as long as it's aligned and important for that person, then that's going to fit into their life story.
Yeah.
If that is not in somebody's value system, or maybe the money is a means to an end, which, for example, paying for a vacation for quality time with their family, and that's more of a value, that overall money isn't going to carry nearly as much weight for them. It's like, I'm not doing this for that. It's really, actually, I want to check off at 5 o'clock or
Mhm.
not work Fridays because I want to spend some time with my family. And that's the value that means something to them.
Yeah, and it's happened at such a societal level. I think these things happen sort of naturally through life as you get to a stage I'm 54 years old. That's all this gray hair is, 54 years of in the
Wisdom.
making. Exactly. That's what everybody on the call and everybody who's a member of Voyager and in Dave's world, it's like it's wisdom that we have a lot of. And there has been historically some natural placeholders in the life cycle of once you get over 40-ish and that sort, you start to look at life a little bit differently. Maybe you've had a parent die. Maybe you've had some cancer, had to go through. You have these moments where you sort of get in, you have a grip with your own mortality.
Totally.
And that's normal, and that happens. And I think these things that are happening. Well, in the last 2 years, we saw 1 million of our countrymen die. We saw 5 million people across the planet die. All of a sudden, this in our face grip with our own mortality, it happened at the society level.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. What's happening with the psychology out there because of this?
Oh, that we could do a whole hour on that. So COVID really has kind of been described in the field as I just lost my train. It's a collective trauma.
Collective trauma. That I've never heard that.
And so it's interesting, even like with the psychologist background and my mental health training, kind of joking with peers of mine, it's like, we didn't get training of when we also are going through the same thing at the exact same time that our clients are. So It's been kind of a ride, I'll admit. But the psychology of this is there's a lot going on, and I'll just name a couple things, but it is kind of a fascinating time, especially with the polarization of the vaccines. And I'm just going to stop there and leave, like, there's a lot of social psychology things happening. There's a lot of the fear is a very motivating factor, as well as germs, or as far as germs go, as far as the vaccines go, in-group, out-group stuff. It's like really fascinating. But as far as it relates to work and leaving corporate and recognition and self, I think it has, as you kind of said, shocked us and jolted us to be like in this moment of pause. And it's like, whoa, what have I been doing and why?
Yeah.
And also, I don't think that's really how, as you're saying, want to spend maybe the second half of my life. And even with COVID and everything being forced to go virtual and telehealth, people are realizing, like, so I literally can do my job from home. I don't need that commute. Oh, that gives me 2 hours of time back in my day. That's time for self-care. That's time with the kids. That's time with my spouse. That's time for a movie, or a condensed work week, whatever. So just awesome things.
That's amazing. So you have decided, we met probably a few months ago and we've chatted a few times, and you have decided that it's important for people to have someone to reach out to talk about self-care in work, and to someone to work with, and some ideas to have as we enter this new transition. For the next minute or two, could you tell us a little bit about your practice and how you do that and what you see? Because inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for asking. So I really kind of specialize in how my tagline, if you will, is like working with people identifying and struggling with stress, fear, and confusion of some of these big life changes, right? And COVID has accelerated that, as we've been talking about. Work is one of those things, but I also have people questioning relationships, marriages, identity development, everything along those lines. But I do want to keep this focused here on work, because that's your kind of clientele. But as we've been talking, even for your community, I'm sure they will resonate with some of those feelings that came up, even like, well, do I make this decision? Or do I, like, there's this path and it's pretty paved and it's clean and it's straight and it looks good and it's been applauded to go on that path. But now I see like this dirt road, and that kind of looks intriguing, and my gut and my body is wanting to go that way. Oh, I don't know. Fear of failure, fear of judgment of what other people are going to think.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. So imposter syndrome comes in. Like, there's a lot of good emotional work. And really, I view my role is I'm just the bad influence that encourage you to listen to that voice and go do the dang thing, It's what you want to do. You're going to feel better, I promise, but you just need like a little nudge.
You need a little nudge. Yeah. So when when people do say, hey, Rachel, Dr. Rachel, I am struggling, I'm struggling with change. And, you help people through the mindset of change. Are there some recurring themes or challenges or ideas that like, okay, get it, you're not alone, but what's coming through from the other side? And I don't know if psychology is still practiced on laying on a couch or, through Zoom, or it's a whole different world,
Oh yeah,
right?
it's just like this. It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. But what are those things that come your way as you help people overcome change?
So with change, I always like to do some education around change too, and I'll try to keep it kind of brief here. But generally speaking, there are actually 6 stages to change. And if you do a quick Google search, you'll see this happen. The first one is called pre-contemplation. So basically, this can either be comprised of one of 2 things. You either don't know you have a problem, so kind of just oblivious, or you're in denial of having a problem.
Okay.
But that's what's called pre-contemplation. Then you have contemplation. So here you're like, yeah, I should maybe do something about that. It's like, nah, nah, and you're kind of weighing your pros and cons, which is where a lot of my clients are. And the thing about contemplation is you might stay there for a while, and that's okay. There's no criticism. That's just part of this process, because as we're talking, it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to take into account. Then you move into, once you make a decision and it is to change whatever that change behavior is, you do some preparation, action, and then maintenance, which, okay, we're doing this thing. We're going to keep doing this thing. And then this is people's like cringe part.
Yeah.
Relapse is the 6th part of change. And that is literally built into this process. And I like to include it even with my education on it, because I don't know how many people, but it's like, think of anything you've tried to implement. If it's get up earlier or eat cleaner or work, those are kind of easy ones. It's like, oh, yep. I can totally see how that process came in my life.
Yeah.
The more we do the process though, and this could even be, I call them kind of like practice processes. So if somebody's in contemplation, weighing their pros and cons of whether or not to leave their job or even change their schedule and stop seeing clients on a certain day. So like some of the pros and cons will be the preparation. What would that look like? And then maybe even you try it. So now you're in action. You may or may not maintain it, and you may or may not go back to the way things were, the relapse. You're practicing. So all of this context is to say that I really like to just give and normalize that this relapse and this uncertainty is very much part of this change process. That is not because you're doing it wrong or because you're not strong enough or whatever sort of maybe self-talk is in there. It's part of this process, and it will take however long it takes for you.
Boy, that's a relief, to be honest with you. How many of whatever change we're trying to deal with, right? Like I've always tried to lose a couple pounds and that sort of thing. And I still am. And you've heard this before, where if you do anything for 21 days, you've created a new habit. But you know what? I relapse. I relapse. And I think everybody does. And you have to have that permission, I think. And it's not often given in society is, guess what? Relapse is part of the process. I have never heard that before. Yep. I don't think we like to talk about it because it is kind of like a wah-wah, like it's a bummer. Yeah.
But I think as human nature, and I've heard anywhere from 21 days to 3 months, like I think the jury's kind of out. And also I think it depends how you would define success of achieving that new habit, right? Like
right.
So
Well,
but I think it's very much part of the process and just a normal part of being human.
Oh my God. These are very, very helpful. First of all, I'm going to pause for a minute for anybody who's jumping in, and just it's a radio show. So I have to do the radio thing. So
no, please do.
If you're to give Dr. Rachel a minute to have a sip of water, but for those of you, I see a bunch of people are just jumping in. And for those of you listening, we're here with Dr. Rachel DuPaul, who's talking today about how we face changes, particularly in our career in the fractional world, as you're changing from a full-timer to a fractional, and everything that comes with that, which is a lot. You had just talked about, you have six things. You have some great education things, obviously. just for everybody who's dialing in and who will look for later, as a way to get started, to think about that. Obviously, they can give you a call. Is there tools on your website? Where should I point people if they say, hey, I really got to deal with my change? Should I just send them to your website? Do you have a tool? What's the best way to start?
Yeah, definitely my website. So I actually have some blogs on especially
Okay.
stages of change as well as stress management. And that's all from my website. So that's www.betterbalancepsychology.com. That even in my specialty pages, there's more information of like how and what does this look like? Because sometimes people aren't really clear, like if they feel stuck or tired, that actually might be depression talking or negative self-beliefs or things like, and very changeable, malleable things that through talk therapy, or even, I'm not going to try to talk myself out of a job, but if with a good social support, they might even be able to reflect that back to you, be like, I think you're kind of getting in your own way here with this. So yeah, definitely my website, there's a lot of resources on there as
There
well.
is. Did I type it right in the chat? Did I do that right? Better
Looks
Balance
right to
Psychology?
me, yeah.
All right, good. Everybody go there, get started. We're all dealing with change, whether you're choosing to do it or not.
Right.
And I think that's something maybe we should talk about a little bit, is sometimes we choose, like we're going to make a change, and sometimes change happens to us without us necessarily deciding it, whether you've been laid off or just, the company closed. Change happens to us probably as much as we choose it, right?
Yeah. And then your choice becomes whether or not you're going to adapt to that change. And by choosing not to adapt or do anything different, that is a choice. And I think a lot of people forget that too, right? It's like, well, I'm just not going to choose. It's like, well, that's actually a choice in and of itself.
That's a good point. I'm not going to make a choice, so I'm going to be stuck in the middle of the road. I don't think people see it that way often, do they?
I don't think so. And I mean, I'm not an advocate of that one, because things that are really helpful for us and feeling in control is that sense of agency, that I have a little bit of power. I didn't have control whether or not I got laid off or my company closed or COVID happened, but I have control and agency over how I'm going to choose to respond to that. Am I going to be cranky and irritable and stressed out for a little bit, adjusting? Totally. But am I going to do that for however long and just kind of stew on it and ruminate?
That middle place is a tough place to be, is when you don't have control. And we should talk about that for a few minutes, because there's been a big change in control in the economy. I remember when COVID started, we started to come out of it a little bit to whatever degree we did. And there was some people on Wall Street, pretty adamant about everybody get your asses back to the office. I need to see your faces. And that was control. We're going to do things this way. That's control. Even without COVID, historically, it's like control was from the top down. And now we live in a world where that's not the case, particularly if you're a fractional professional or a small business, you're in charge. Do you have advice and counsel on how to deal with that shift? Because that's a big deal.
It's a huge, huge deal. And I think it gets understated, probably not within your group and your people. But I think just in general, people who do decide to go out on their own in whatever capacity that means for them. I kind of joke that I don't think people have informed consent. And I'll speak from my personal experience. I had no clue what I was signing up for as far as the personal kind of identity shifts that were going to come up for me. And a lot of that is relating to what you were just talking, is like, I used to take orders and I used to follow orders. And now I'm making the orders and I'm accountable only to myself. And that's like my position. I realize people have a little bit differences there, but
I think it's very similar. I mean, if you are choosing to be an independent professional, it's a relief and a responsibility to take control. And again, through generational learning, right? Like 75 years, if you say that, however we look at work, there's a great by the way, I should pause for a minute. There's a great author. His name is Steve Cadigan. He's like the dude. He's got this book called Workquake, and he's on his second book, or he's working on it, and he's on CNBC. And he always talks about, like, we are in a workquake. We're not a shift. This is like an absolute shaking to the ground. And in his book, he talks about this a little bit. This what does this workquake mean? You know, and it's not insignificant. We look at work the way we have defined it up until 2020 as kind of established post-war, 1950, let's say. Get up, you go to the office. This is a big chunk. It's not all of society, of course, but a big chunk of the American economy is you get up, you go to the office, the 9 to 5.
Yep.
The company takes care of you, you do your thing, and it's a very polished thing. And now it's not.
Yeah, it was clean. It was easy. It was structured. It was, easy to wrap your head around. The expectations was like, this is just what we do, right? This is very clean.
How, Janice, I'm writing, it's Workquake, or for everybody, Workquake by Steve Cadigan is the book. And he's actually writing the forward to our next Voyager book. So he's a really, it's a great book to read. But it was clean, but at the same time, it wasn't. You know, when people come into Voyager, they say, hey, you know, I did 30 years at this business. I was a team player, and I was cut and gone. And the next day I was nothing to that organization.
Yeah, definitely.
So in some ways it was, what is this I'm sure there's a psychological term is, it wasn't as clean as you thought. You weren't as protected as you thought.
Well, when I say clean, I meant like and easy to conceptualize and wrap your head around. I did not mean to say clean in that they gave a shit about. Sorry, I probably that they cared about you, or that you were more than a number to them. And I think that's what some of this pushback is people are starting to stand on their own 2 feet and value their own time, energy, health. More than the corporate's value of $1. And there's this clash in values that's going on. And again, I think that some of that, then going back to your point, as far as when you go from the corporate world to being on your own and taking orders from yourself, it's just that much more important, I think, for yourself to not get stuck in that same rat race mentality of chasing the dollar and keep your values. Why did you leave? What was important to you?
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to just regurgitate what you left for yourself. I want you to be able to live things differently in a more meaningful way.
You know, I it's funny. I feel like I'm having a whole therapy session right now. It's fantastic. And everybody listening probably is too. This is awesome. I get a therapy session. This is huge.
Hey, there you go. Happy to help.
Yeah. But make sure you go to Dr. Rachel's website and do the thing and connect and get the help and talk and everything else. But it is.
I mean, if you don't need it, more power to you. You know, I'm just here to kind of validate and share that you're not alone. This is very challenging and hard, and a lot can come up.
A lot does come up. Yeah, a lot does. You know, in our coursework in Voyager, we got the coursework, and there's specific chapters that talk about self-care and things to do as you do this, but they're not informed by what you know, obviously. But it's a start, right? It's to get you thinking that dimension is important. And the
better than the corporations probably had.
Yeah, right. And the reason we did that is it's important. You know, you have to identify this. And our fear when we started Voyager was, if all people do is kind of repeat in a different way what they were doing before, they're not going to have that life fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it's like, I want to be a cog for myself as opposed to a cog for somebody else, that's really not what people are looking for.
Right.
And it's a bigger shift than that. I sort of lost my train of thought there, but anyway, it is a big shift, and people are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would tell you that, especially people who are just starting this thing, like on the other side, when you become a fractional professional and you build your practice and you're solving problems for a couple of businesses, you get to this place of, what did you say earlier, free and light and happy, which just was absent for a long time for a lot of folks. So, and that's sort of part of the journey, is sort of giving yourself agency, like, that's okay. Work isn't supposed to be that much of your life. You're not supposed to be miserable.
Or is your work supposed to lead to those feelings, whereas it hasn't before? So like kind of rewriting that narrative again, is that work actually can be fun or joyful or playful when it's
Yeah.
a better fit and you're doing something that you care about, or it is a better balance of like values and time management, or all of those things, because you're in control of whether or not you want to value your own health and your own time and your own energy,
Yeah.
which goes back to being your own boss kind of thing. Like that is like you can decide that, but it is messy. And this is where I want to compare it. It's messier. It's harder to grasp. What does that mean to feel happier or fulfilled? It was really easy to grasp. Oh, you want me to make 100K and work 9 to 5 and this many PTOs? Like, okay, got it. Check. Very logical, written down.
Clean, like you said, clean. Yep, clean.
Yep. But now it's like, well, I want joy and happiness and fulfillment. It's like, okay, how do I do that? That sounds great, right? What does that look like? And that's where it becomes very, very personalized, and everybody's journey, there's similarities and there's overlaps, but it can become very, very personal very quickly.
Yeah. It's very hard. It's hard and again, this is, we are pro independence, pro fractional, pro, build yourself up and do this. It doesn't make us anti anything. Corporations and the corporate structure, it doesn't make us, it's just, we're pro that. And what's interesting that I have found is it is very hard for businesses. They struggle too. They have a hard time creating an environment today that people like, this is great. This really works well for me. I think it's tolerable, but it seems so hard to what you get here in the fractional independent world. It seems so hard to provide that in a larger structure. Why do you think that is?
My gut reaction is it's just a numbers game, right? Because you, me, and all of the listeners right now, we could be working for the same company, but we have different preferences, personalities, backgrounds, working styles, that if we all work for the same company, I might be cranky about one of these things and you might be like, that's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So I think the second you get into a larger number of, and it doesn't even need to be like a multi-billion-dollar, but that's even harder yet. But even a mid-sized business, I think it just gets harder the more people that are included in it, because again, we're individuals and we have differences, preferences. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. Like, it's a really hard to do a catch-all, I think.
Yeah.
And to your point,
we all have different identities.
100%. Yeah. What's important to us. And then the identities that we carry, who we are, our experiences. Absolutely. And I want to be clear too. I'm not trying to bash corporate. I think we've come a long way. We just have a lot longer to go on making that better. I am seeing some really cool shifts and changes though, and corporates realizing like, oh, we need to care about our employees a little bit more than maybe we have in the past. So I think that good changes are happening, and that's to say it's still not going to be a good fit for everyone.
No, that's true. But you're right. There has been a measure of, I think, sleepwalking through culture, which I think is probably natural for cultures as they progress. Is there's a certain amount of, there's just a cadence to the way things are, so it can lead to some sleepwalking. And I think the good thing out of what a lot of the work quake, as Steve would say, is it's causing everybody to readjust their values and think what's important.
Yep.
I started and ran a business for a very long time, and it's hard to make everybody happy and to create an environment that really, really works and to respect them. It's not hard to respect people, but it's hard to create an environment where it's just there every single minute of every single day.
Yep.
It's so hard. And so I've got a lot of empathy and sympathy for big companies that are trying so hard to like, I want it to be good for people. I really do.
Yep.
But there's limitations to what they can do compared to,
of course,
I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to have coffee with my family and work out and then work for some customers and I'll be happy there. It is hard. It's a tough competitive thing right now for companies to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's better companies who are trying and you can feel it and care and still might be falling short, as opposed to companies that where it's like, okay, they really just aren't even putting in effort.
Yeah.
I just think that it is hard. I don't envy anybody in a leadership role at one of these large really trying to make this work. It
Mhm.
can be very challenging. Absolutely.
You know who I always thought were the perfect role models for the fractional sort of life?
Who's that?
Farmers. And
Farmers.
the reason I say that is if you look, farmers, the farmers I've known growing up and even farmers today, wonderfully independent souls, really good at self-accountability,
Totally.
really value their day. So the farmers I know, and I'm not going to do this Norman Rockwell, they're the backbone. They are the backbone, but they're not the only backbone of America. But the farmers I know, they're super independent. They love what they do. They get to get out, so they get to be outdoors. And I think they're a great role model. No one is coming to save their day. Yes, they'll have crop insurance and things like that, but it's up to them.
Yeah, put in the
And
work.
they know
reap the
that,
rewards.
and that's part of it. It's really hard work. I know a lot of people that used to farm and said, it's just too much. I can't be doing hay at 4 a.m. and cows 2 shifts. And they're right. It asks a lot, but they are wonderful guides to the core of what being independent is. I think so. I don't think it's and that's so common, right? Farming is just so close to the earth and it's part of our culture for centuries and thousands of years. But at its core, it's a self-responsibility. I'm in charge of my own output, and to find some level of balance within that. I think they're a great example of this thing, maybe overlooked.
I really like that. I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm even thinking like, so definitely they have the chores ahead of them, and so they need to make sure that they have time to do those, but also they can take their breaks whenever and make that break look however they want, whether they're swimming in the creek or they're taking lunch or taking a nap or but keeping the eye on the prize of the purpose for their day too, and that I like that analogy.
It's go spend time out in rural Minnesota, rural America, and hang out with the farmer. It's wonderful, and it's like, they're going to work dawn till dusk and more, and they take such risks, right? They'll be like, God, I worked so hard for the last 3 months, and then straight line winds came in, and all of my work is laying in the field down. I don't have a crop this year. I mean, imagine that. And while that is stressful and they are human like anybody else, they deal with it, they're so darn patient. I think from just being so self-accountable and everything as a culture, it's a beautiful thing. So
well, I think, and this goes back, Adam and had asked a question for me to come back to touch on managing your own control of change. So this would be with the farmer example, I think, to circle back, they know, and I think anybody who has a product that is maybe beyond your control, whether that's livestock or produce, or really even if you want to get to like a supply chain of command, like that has really messed with some people.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, so we could even get modern with it, but regardless, knowing that your sense of control and your ability, unless you're hand making and knitting stuff, right here, you yourself, but granted, again, where's the yarn coming from?
Yeah.
We are at the mercy sometimes of things beyond our control, and it is up to us to choose how we're going to respond to that. And it is only in how we choose that where our power lies. So this farmer, for example, these winds took out their whole crops. Well, they can, and they might even like curse and moan and be mad and maybe drink some beers and whatever. But then it's like, well, are they going to stop there and roll over and be like, I'm done? Like, I'm just not a farmer anymore? I suppose in theory, maybe, but if they're dependent on that for income, they're going to get right back to work. And
they
that's
have to.
Choice.
Yeah. And I don't think it's just for income. I think they go, if I'm going to keep this family farm going, if I want to wake up in the morning and hear birds, then I just got to pick it up tomorrow. Right. It's a wonderful thing. You made a good segue there, Doc. You made a good segue, because I do have to give space for our people to call in. So I'm gonna actually, Adam, I hope you don't mind if I'm calling on you, but I'm gonna ask you I'm gonna allow you to talk here and press Dr. Rachel with the question, maybe dig a little deeper into what you wanted to poke at a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Adam, are you there?
I'm here, John.
Hey, buddy.
Excuse me. Thank
Hi,
you for
Adam.
hi, Dr. Rachel. A pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, John. I thought Dr. Rachel was doing such a fine job of answering the question that I didn't go any deeper.
Well,
How about maybe let's speak a little bit more globally.
Or even your personal experience, whatever floats your boat.
mhm.
Well, okay, I'll be happy to come back to that, but I guess globally, yes, it's been brought on by the current or new economy, which may have been spurred or exacerbated by COVID. But going backwards to the beginning of time, Rachel, change has been constant and we've always had to manage it. And it's a kind of an existential question of the human condition. Can you maybe touch on that as opposed to putting it under the current microscope today? See, now I turn the table.
Well, you know what? That's a really good point, Adam, and I talk a lot, but I'll let Rachel answer that. But it's interesting. We fear it, right? And yet it's been here since day one.
It's the only constant. Change is the only constant.
And yet it's scary. And I'm not saying you're not right to be afraid of it. I'm not saying that at all, but recognizing it and giving yourself permission, like, I get to be uncomfortable for a little bit. It's part of the process. I have no control over that.
Mhm.
John,
Doesn't it feel good when you don't have control over things?
Maybe we're both answering the question. It feels more acute now, Rachel,
With COVID?
with COVID and the volatile maybe economy.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe over the course of history, that's normal. It always feels acute when you're in the moment.
It does. I also would say, and I don't know if this is I paused with your initial kind of posing of the question, because the second we get into philosophical, I think that could be a whole nother hour. And I'm always here for those conversations, but I want to make sure I don't get on a tangent. So staying focused, like, why maybe now, since change has been around since the turning of time, right? And it's the only constant in our world. One thought that I have of, like, why do we still fear it? There is psychology on that. I mean, I'm going to out myself here as a believer in evolution. I realize not everybody here would necessarily share my beliefs, but within evolutionary theory and evolutionary psychology, you have different stages of brains, right? So you have your reptilian, your mammalian, and then your human brain. And people sometimes call them different things, but neither here nor there. Your reptilian really only cares about your basic kind of autonomic functions or automatic functions. So you're eating, you're sleeping, your digestion, like, you got it covered. That's all I care about. You get into with mammalian, a little bit more nuanced with emotions and whatnot. Now humans, we still have that reptilian part of, like, we don't want to stop doing something that is keeping us alive. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? But we also have this frontal lobe that's coming in to be like, well, I don't really know how I feel about that, and the meaning of life and existential, mortality. And, like, these are big. And so now we almost have this kind of conundrum of different versions of our brain that can be at play, and why that is so scary for us. It's like, well, you think we'd be used to it by now, like, what the heck? But it literally goes against a part of our brain that's like, no, don't do anything different. You're fed, you're sleeping, like, life is good, you're breathing, don't change anything.
So that is both safe and dangerous. The reptilian brain is both safe and dangerous then, isn't it? Like,
absolutely.
Stay the course, everything's fine until, right, change.
Yep. It is intended to keep us alive. It is intended to have us reproduce. Like, it is really, majority of the time, our advocate. It's just when we start trying to apply that older part of our brain to our modern world where we might start running into a little bit more conflicts.
Oh my God. Talk about, oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, don't change right now. If you don't embrace the front part of your lobe, if you
Right,
don't
right.
listen to that, the risk is so great.
One could argue. I mean, one could also argue it's not, because again, you're alive, your heart is beating, you're breathing, like,
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
and maybe, Rachel, that's an essential part of change, or confronting change, or capitalizing on change. We need that sense of discomfort, that sense of unease, that personal challenge to ourselves in order to know we're affecting change on our terms, or
Mhm.
being effective in a good way. Does that make sense?
it does make sense. And I like how you pose that too, because it's, and saying it another way, it would be part of that process, right? So that emotional discomfort would be part of that change process, which I think is what I haven't said it that way, but capitalizing on like these emotions of confusion, kind of conflictual feelings, and then fear is, yeah, that's, I think, totally what's partly come into play there.
Just part of the process.
And
You know,
if I may really quickly, Adam, to your second question, like why now? I think there's a lot of different reasons why now. COVID is a big thing. It's a big, scary thing. And, we have, as a people, I mean, we've had the Spanish flu, we've had, I don't remember the one that was
Yeah.
before that, but it's new. And, well, it's new for our generation, the people who are alive right now today. So I think it is kind of like nothing we've ever experienced, because we weren't around when we've had other global pandemics. So that's one thing that comes to mind. But two, and this could also be its own hour-long thing, pros and cons of social media and information, and
Mhm.
the spread of information is at all-time highs. That also, fear is one of the things that spreads like rapid fire through any of those social media outlets, so that I think it is easier to maybe feel like this is a bigger deal right now, when maybe if this happened 50 years ago, we would have all kind of been in our own bubbles on our own farms. I don't know.
Because we didn't have access to information so quickly, and all of that. Now, the flip side of reptilian brain, and what we've often heard, is moments of change create wonderful moments of opportunity. And I'll give us all an example. Is when we changed from the horse to the car in 1905. I mean, Matt,
Big deal.
if you loved horses and were in the horse business, that's nostalgic, but the societal change that happened created more economic growth than the horse industry ever had, and more new jobs and everything else. So change now, I'm not judging it for good or bad. I actually like horses, but the reality is change. The point is change creates wonderful moments of opportunity. And sometimes I think that opportunity lens is lost because the fear of change is so big. Let's have people think about opportunity a little bit. It's okay to accept change, because on the other side is great opportunity for you.
Well, absolutely. I love that you're bringing that too. Is I think change, again, from that reptilian part of our brain, it is automatically assumed that it's going to be negative. Don't change anything. We're doing okay. But what if we change something and it actually is going to benefit us, or it's an opportunity for the positive? And we're still going to have that initial, like, again, I'm good. I checked out and breathe in, and I'm doing great. Don't do anything. But so that's there again. It's adaptive, it's protective, but there is always, now with the human brain on board, it's like, this actually might be better for you, and you might feel good. And so there's opportunities and positivity, and I love it.
Yeah, those who are in our community certainly know that. Like, yep, it was change. And what we hear now is, I'm never going back. You can't pay me. Yeah. You can't pay me enough. You can't give me enough vacation days. I'm never going back. And you have to think about that, is what does that mean? It's like, well, it's not just what that was, because in the reptilian brain, what that wasn't that bad, looking through the reptile lens. But what you have now, happiness, time for health, more love, more peace, even though the world is crazy sometimes, and particularly these days,
Yep.
we have a chance to be, as Gary Vaynerchuk said, wake up and feel good about ourselves.
Mm,
That's hard to give up. I don't want to give it up.
mhm.
Oh my gosh. Nigel has a question here, and because we're short on time, I'm not going to put him in here. We'll read it though. Nigel asks, Rachel, what do you think of cognitive behavioral therapy in dealing with the issues raised by change?
First of all, Nigel, excellent question. Take this as my personal opinion, and not of the field. I think cognitive behavioral therapy, also known just acronym CBT, is a very adaptive and helpful psychology practice. As far as how I think it would be helpful with the issues raised by change, moderately helpful at best.
Okay.
Is what I would personally say about that. Why do I think that? So just a quick overview of CBT. I know we don't have a ton of time, but it's like CBT is really looking at your thoughts and what are your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are happening automatically and maybe so like milliseconds fast that are dictating the way that you're showing up in the world and how you're feeling.
Mhm.
That if those are worrisome, anxiety, or depressive in nature and very down in the dumps, we can get in these spirals and then go from a neutral standpoint to a very negative kind of standpoint each time we spiral down that cycle.
Mhm.
I see how that could be helpful and applicable for as far as issues raised around change, like stress, fear, and confusion, as far as, okay, I'm nervous about this thing, or I'm worried about X thing. I think that we could get in there with the thought cycles and try to break those and stop those, or, at least not take you all the way down the pathway.
Mhm.
I also think, though, what CBT does not personally account for, in my opinion, is this acceptance level of things larger than us and that things are outside of our control. In which case CBT would say, like, well, you just need to stop thinking that way. Well, I mean, I can work on that, but what if those thoughts keep happening? Because some of us there's a biological disposition to a lot of mental health issues. Not saying that that's you.
Mhm.
But there is sometimes we can't just stop them. Our thoughts do that. Our brains have thoughts.
Mhm.
So how could we ground ourselves in our body, in our mind, in our body and in our soul and our emotions, to be like, I'm going to be okay, even if these things happen.
Mm. That's huge. And also above my pay grade. You're talking psychology at a level that, that's why we need you.
Happy to help. Happy to say it's a weird, because those anxious thoughts and the fear of failure and the imposter syndrome, again, really adaptive in a lot of hands. They're trying to keep you safe, maybe not physically, but socially or intellectually. Like, it doesn't feel good to be rejected by peers,
Mhm.
so trying to keep you safe. But are those irrational? I don't think they're irrational. We can
Mhm.
look at some evidence for the contrary, but the thing about change and growth areas is you're constantly pushing that, right? And when you get comfortable, you push it a little bit more, and then you
Mhm.
push it a little bit more. It's only when you can self-soothe yourself and be like, okay, so I'm feeling this way, I'm going to do it anyway. I trust myself. I have a belief that this will work out, a gut feeling, things along those lines. That goes beyond, I think, what CBT can offer.
So on that, when you're working with people, or advice you would give people here today saying, hey, this is great. I'm changing, and I've left my old job and I'm starting my own thing, and I'm going to be an independent fractional executive. But Doc, I need some tools. Can you give me some tools to sort of help me as I go through this? I feel good about the change. I know change is part of the process, but I'm also not really trained for this.
Mhm.
And Voyager training is great, but it's not Dr. Rachel Duplo. So, what tools do you have to kind of keep people sustained and happy and know that they're going on the right path?
So what I would say is it's not as clean as I would like, and probably as your community would like. I don't have this like do these 5 things and it's foolproof.
That's
Like,
okay.
I
We're
wish I
good
would.
with ambiguity.
I would be paid so much more if I could say that. But as far as like tools for success and like having a good support network to remind you that you are, doing what you wanted to do and set out and build you up. We all have moments of weakness. We all have moments of self-doubt. I don't think that means that it rises to the level of, oh, you should talk to a therapist, but get other business owners, get people in your network, make sure your family's on board. Because a lot of people, I think, get pushback and judgment from their family, especially if there's different generational views. I recommend this, write your values down. I have mine on a sticky note right on the top of my computer right here, so that any decision I make in my business, is it with this one? And I have top 5. So do any of my values relate to those things? Because I want to make sure, again, that I'm not just repeating a cog in a wheel, but for myself, I want to live a values aligned life. And in order to do that, I need to have a values aligned business as well.
Wow.
And so have reminders for yourself and realize that when you have moments of weakness, that's not uncommon, and reach out for support.
Do you think we're heading into an era of exponentially more values aligned business and work?
100%. Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Tell me more.
I mean, I think that's what people have been, why there has been such an exodus, right? With this great resignation, is people are like, yeah, that wasn't it. That didn't do it for me. So they're trying to figure out for themselves, what are their values and how could that look in their life? And what I'm so excited about is that the more, and this is again, personal belief, the more people are true to themselves, the more they're going to show up in the world authentically, but then cause this amazing ripple effect that is just like, I get chills talking about it, because it's just, it's ecstatic. It's energizing. It's electric. Who doesn't want to live in a world where everybody loves what they do?
And the signs are there right now. The level of innovation that's happening in the small business world, so the fractional people and those they serve, is off the charts. Because I think we've all had a chance to sort of take a breath and say, I don't have to do it that way anymore. So if I'm going to push myself and do things in sort of the old model, what I'm pushing myself towards is I want more money and I want a bigger house, which means I have to spend more time and less time for health, family, and values. So I think we're all like breathing out. We're sort of exhaling right now, like, it doesn't have to be that. And businesses are learning that, and people are learning that. I think what I know is happening is there's this incredible, just run and push towards innovation on that. Because when you want to chase your values, you're chasing your passions and the thing you love. And naturally, you'll take that in what the things you love to do work. I did a post this week about find the thing that you have infinite amounts of energy for and do that. Because if you love science, you have infinite amounts of energy for science, just chase it. Because that's what you value. I don't know if people have infinite amounts of energy to have their laptop open 24/7. I think there's more. Or checking their phone all the time, right?
Right.
There's more to it than that. And that is going to spur an era of innovation and economic and prosperity that I think we've never seen before because of that.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think people are getting creative on how they're turning passions, as you're saying, into income streams. I think that, and technology advancements at in that capacity.
Yep.
But I also think that it is just such an exciting time that people are, as you're saying, they're chasing passions, but they're also so excited about their passion that they're connecting more, they're talking about it more, so there's more knowledge going around and bouncing ideas and brainstorming, and then that gets other people excited. So there's that ripple effect, right? I just think I'm excited.
I am too. I feel like we're at one of those moments in our, so despite all the change and all the difficulty with change we talked about for most of the show, is we're at a moment of opportunity.
Mhm.
Like this is post-war opportunity. This is industrial revolution opportunity, maybe internet opportunity. Like I think we're at that moment of opportunity. And the only thing is right now, we're just in the middle of it. What was and what's to be.
Totally. Yep, we're in
And-
transition. Yep.
And I think it's going to be values-based. I'm with you on that. I hate to bring this show to a close. This has been amazing and fantastic for people who have tuned in. We've been talking to Dr. Rachel DuPaul about change and how we change in our work and what change means to our lives, and boy, so much more. Please find Dr. Rachel. Please tell people, your practice and your website again, and then I'll close our show.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you because this has been so much fun for me. I could just go another hour.
I love it.
So I am a licensed psychologist in private practice, specializing in helping people navigate some major life transitions and changes, including either having just left or contemplating leaving corporate culture into independent work. You can find more information even through my blogs and resources and all that at my website, www.betterbalancepsychology.com. You also can schedule a free phone consult if you are interested in some one-on-one work, right? You have access right to my calendar. So just schedule that right from the website.
That's fantastic. Can I ask you, in our online community on LinkedIn, would you mind putting a post in every now and then so people can just kind of reminder to access you, and whether it's today's idea on dealing with change or your thought of the day or, whatever you want to do. But if you would put that to the community, I know everybody would love it.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. And thank you for the invite. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It was really a lot of fun.
This is great. Look for the show on YouTube shortly thereafter, after the internet does its downloading and all that kind of stuff. Dr. Rachel, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been great. Have a good weekend to you and everybody else.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.